and welcome to half a follow-up to last week's video, Prehistoric Comedy Central, and half a totally self-indulgent story time with Benny sort of thing. But if you're into the history of stand-up comedy at all, maybe you want to go along with me for the ride on this one. So anyway, yes, last week's video was Prehistoric Comedy Central, which was one of my little history lessons, and it was on everything that led up to the launch of the Comedy Central cable network. And the stinger for that episode was the first few seconds of a stand-up comedy special that would run periodically on Comedy Central. And also, it was kind of a follow-up of sorts to the previous week where I had done a live stream, and it was, for all intents and purposes, intended to be Ask the Archive, just a chat, Q&A sort of thing. And but I always like having some sort of activity ahead of time. And so I decided to play a bit of Russian roulette live on the internet, so to speak, with a Betamax tape I had found that, if labeled correctly, was a white whale of mine, but I had never popped it in, so for all I knew there was pornography or something on it. But here is the tape. It was indeed labeled correctly, and what I was after was the Messiest of Gallagher from 1986. Leo Gallagher, better known simply as Gallagher, and he passed away, unfortunately, back in 2022. I never did get to see him live, but for a lot of people my age and a bit older and slightly younger, he was the first stand-up comedian we ever saw. He was the one that you just saw the most on TV, and was the first stand-up concert for a lot of us. And I was certainly one of those kids. So my introduction was probably in 1992, and my family got cable in 1992, and we had VH1, used to be best known for music videos, but we only got it 24 hours a day on the weekends. The relevance of that is Friday night they would do stand-up comedy specials, and they would do Gallagher all the freaking time, just about every week. And I saw not most of what he did, but everything that was circulating at the time. And so there was one that just always stuck with me, and I never had a tape handy to try and record it, and that was the Messiest of. And as the name implies, it is a greatest hits of sorts, but it's a very bizarre greatest hits. It's like there are bits of his regular stand-up shows in there, but it's like they intentionally picked the most corny, groan-inducing jokes and stunts for it. And each segment of it had these little mini sketches that were just totally weird and surreal for no apparent reason. Very Dadaist, really. Not that I knew what that was at the time. But it was, you got one with, he's got a bunch of little people, midgets, acting as security for him, I guess you could say. And there's a segment with Elvira involving some very disgusting use of condiments, as in ketchup, mustard, relish, that sort of stuff. And the whole thing ends with probably my first real taste of real, true surrealist humor, and one that just stuck with me. And I'll cut in pertinent footage here, but it starts with, it's at the end of the special, and it's Gallagher walking down this Hollywood sidewalk with his arm around this gigantic, screwed up looking, as one would expect, I call it Cycloctopus, a cycloptic octopus, so the name should make sense. And I'm sure that thing cost a lot to make, full movie prop size. And so suddenly, if you know Gallagher, he always ended his shows with a little thing called Sledge-O-Matic. And I think it took on such a life of its own that people forget what it was really about. It was a parody of the old per inquiry ads for things like the Vegematic and just all those kitchen tools. And so, whereas the Vegematic would help you chop an onion or something, Sledge-O-Matic, of course, was a very bloated, ridiculous version of that. So, it's a tree stump with a hole drilled in it with a broomstick going through the hole, and he would smash whatever produce or just any old thing at times. I remember one time he just beat the crap out of a newspaper machine, and so he would always finish with a watermelon. So getting back to this segment, watermelons it's the revenge of the watermelons. They're supposed to be just kind of randomly falling from the sky, though they're obviously being just thrown off of a roof. And he does get hit in the head with one of them, but he winds up using the Cycloctopus as a shield. So he hides under this big prop, and then the footage slows down, the music gets very dreamy, and it truly gets surreal, and the end credits are rolling over it, and come the end of it, everything speeds back up to the normal speed. He looks out, and there's just what has to be like 2 or 3 inches of just nothing but watermelon guts and juice around him that's just pooled up, and there's no way he's going to be able to stand up in this stuff, so he has to swim his way out. But that just stuck with me. I'd never seen anything that was just that completely bizarre. And getting back to the little wraparound segments, they are the most poorly edited things. Audio just pops in and out, and it makes no sense half the time. And there's like typos in some of the on-screen stuff. It's just so totally off kilter. But anyway, VH1 reran this special a few times, but I never had a tape handy. And then a few years later, Comedy Central ran it, and this time not only did I know it was coming, I had a tape handy, so I recorded that sucker. Unfortunately, it was pretty heavily edited, it was censored, as was VH1. And for the worst part, that ending that had stuck with me so much, it was not the end of the tape. So I was still going to record other stuff after the special, but I didn't leave enough space after the special. So when you pop in a tape, if you're halfway through, it does rewind slightly, and it was recorded in EP mode, so it does not take much to lose a minute or two of footage. And so I accidentally recorded over the last minute or so of that sequence, and I never saw that special again. And it became kind of a mission in life, a very warped mission, to try and find this special again. Now, of course, this had never been on home video. Most of his stuff has, and a lot of it's been on DVD. Some of it's on streaming these days, actually. And but this was never going to make it to home video for 2 reasons. The band Fishbone and the Pat Travers Band. And the special was also my introduction to those two as well. So it opened a few doors for me, come to think of it. But it was just never going to be on home video. Nobody was going to try and clear the rights to those songs that were used in there, and plus whatever bits of classical music that were used in there as well, which I think were real major label, major orchestra performances. So anyway, going all the way back to VH1 here, there was another special that was made explicitly for VH1, and for years I thought I was just going completely crazy and that I just imagined it, but it does exist. It's called I Want to Make a Video Too. And I remember it being this totally bizarre, again, almost completely green screened thing that Gallagher did with his then teenage daughter. And if memory serves, it's the daughter making a video and dad's trying to muscle his way in, even though he's the famous one already. I want to make a video too. And I saw it once. I don't think it ever got rerun. I probably would have taped it had it ever been rerun. And I have never been able to find it. I don't think there's any great reason why it couldn't have been on home video, but it just never was. So I assume it's some sort of ownership issue. But for the longest time, I thought maybe I just imagined it. But in more recent years, I have found a couple of references to it on the internet, but nobody has a copy of it. I'm sure it's sitting in a vault somewhere, or Gallagher's estate at this point probably has their own personal copy, but that's become kind of another white whale of mine. Even though it's not, I don't remember it being very good, I would just kind of like to see it again, just to see if it was as screwed up as I remember. So anyway, yeah, that is the end of my little, very self-indulgent, rambly story there. But yeah, it's kind of interesting how some things that you wouldn't think of being all that significant can just stick with you for so long. So anyway, that is going to be it here. I'll shut up now. I'll talk to you again soon.
We make excitement or we die.